By the end of the video, you'll know the answers to these key points about the game. There is a piece of art going around at $45,000. That piece of art is this game. So let's check it out now. This is the final of the Chessable Masters. Carlsen has white, Giri has black. The game began. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, c5. Already a very interesting opening choice by Giri. If you check out my previous video, Giri had white versus Nepomniachtchi in the semi-finals, in which Giri won a gem of a game. C takes d5 and now capturing with the knight. Not with the pawn, because even though white gets the center with e4, this is black's plan. Taking the knight, take again, and then bishop b4 check. Bishop d2, take, castle. What has black achieved? Black has swapped off two minor pieces, he has less space, but he has a queenside majority. After bishop c4, white has the center. White can push d5 to create a pass pawn. Before defending his strong center, white can defend it with his rooks. No, cut the last bit. Bishop c4, white has the center. White can push d5 to create a pass pawn. And white can defend his center with his two rooks. So Carlsen is using a different setup from the one Giri used to beat Nepom. Knight d7, castle b6. Knight d7, castle b6. Now in that game, d5 was played, and Giri won a beautiful game. But Carlsen plays rook a d1. Bishop b7, rook e1, both rooks defending both central pawns. Rook c8, bishop b3. You may ask, why didn't white play rook c1? Black's rook is powerful on the c-file because white wants to make d5 work. He may not be able to do that if he swapped off a pair of rooks. White wants more pieces on the board because white has more space. This is white's strategy, getting d5. Rook e8, rook e3, very interesting move. And what's the idea of this rook move? Maybe you go rook d3. Maybe you go d5. Maybe if the knight on f3 moves out the way, white can swing over to the king side with rook g3. So there are three ideas. Queen e1 as well, supporting the e4 pawn. Knight f6 and d5. A new move, the novelty in this game. Black has three pieces, one pawn defending the d5 square, yet Carlsen goes for this. But why? One error is you don't want to play e5 because this move loses all central control. Black can put the knight on d5. This knight looks really dangerous, so if you take it and after take, black's bishop is much better than the knight. And black can get his queen side moving. So e5 is a terrible move. Carlsen goes d5. And after take, e5. This is the middle game pawn sacrifice, the critical point in the game. Knight e4, queen e1. Now white is threatening. Rook takes e4. So Giri gets out the way with queen c7 and now knight d4. This is the star move, which you saw at the beginning of the video. White gave up a pawn to make sure when white advances, the pawn that is on e5, it should not be taken. An amazing middle game idea. In the game, a6 was played, but what if you capture this pawn? Rook takes e5, then f3, and this is a big problem. If you go rook h5, getting out the way and also threatening queen takes h2 check, then h4 first. Now a huge decision needs to be made on the knight on e4. Where can it go? c5, d6 or f6, but all of these squares are bad. After h4, if you play knight c5, then rook e8 check will be checkmate in two moves. If knight f6, then g4, rook h6, and now white is in control. You can go knight f5, you could go g5. g5 attacks both knight and rook, knight f5, and then knight e7 check can win the rook. So here, knight f5, rook g6, knight e7 check. What is the last option? Knight d6. But g4 again, rook h6, knight f5. And the back rank is still a problem. You can't go knight takes f5 because rook e8 check once again. If you go rook e6, blocking the e file, then we can take, and then queen takes e6 check. We're attacking the king and the knight, so if you block with the knight, then we can come in here. Bishop takes d5. Now we're getting that pawn back. Bishop takes d5, and a really cool move here. Queen takes c8 check. Take, knight e7, winning the queen back. So a really nice tactic here. So queen takes c8 check. Take, knight e7, check. a6 played, and now h4. Carlsen admitted that's preparation up to h4. He had seen this position before. Both players started with 15 minutes on the clock. I think here Magnus had 17 minutes, so he gained time, but Giri had 8 minutes. h4, rook d8, f3, now kicking the knight away, knight c5 and h5. Another move might be queen d7, which we'll see soon. But here, Giri played knight e6. Queen d7. Stopping knight f5, but bishop c2. White is going to make knight f5 work anyway. So Giri went knight e6, challenging the knight on d4. It's going to hop into f5. Garry Kasparov once said, a knight on f5 is worth a pawn. In this game, this is exactly what is on the board. Carlsen has sacrificed a pawn to get the knight to f5. Wow. d4, rook d3. So even though this pawn is now advanced on d4, White now tries to pick it up. 3 white pieces attacking the d4 pawn. Black wants to get rid of the bishop on b3. Very powerful piece. So Giri goes knight c5. Another option was bishop d5, but a difficult move to play. And maybe Giri didn't want to play this because White now has knight d6, but maybe this is a good practical chance. Notice the rook was defending the bishop, but this knight is now in the way. Also, this knight attacks that rook. So the best option for Black is to play bishop takes b3, but now White throws in knight takes e8, and this knight attacks the queen. So Black doesn't have time to deal with the bishop on b3. Let's get the knight, and then take, and then h6. So White has won rook for knight, but the knight on e6 is strong, holding the position. There's a pawn on d4. Black's got 2 pawns on the queen side, and he can shuffle the rook over to d8. In the game, rook d3 played, and Giri chose knight c5, trying to get rid of the bishop on b3. Carlsen takes the central pawn, take, knight takes b3, and the logical move is just to recapture with a takes b3. But Carlsen plays a really nice in-between move. He plays queen g3, threatening checkmate on g7. No time to save the knight, so Giri stops it with g6. If you stop it the other way with f6, then rook g4 is just so dangerous. Giri chooses g6. Now you capture the knight, and rook d8 played in the game, allowing Carlsen a memorable finish. Another option might be, let's say, bishop c8, just to force White to make a decision on the knight. But the knight is coming in anyway, to d6. If you go rook f8, rook c4, pushing the pieces back, queen to b8. And in a position like this, White is much better. Rook d8 was played in the game, but we must look at a stunning option with bishop takes f3. One last impossible trick. The best move here is not to take the bishop, but we're going to see why. Let's have a look at a few captures. If you go queen takes f3, then we can now take the knight. If queen takes pawn, then queen takes e5. Black is in time to defend his king side. If rook g4 check, king can go to f8. And then black is surviving. You can take the h7 pawn. Let's go queen c5 check, king h2, rook e5. We're defending along the 5th rank. The king can come to e7. But what if you take with the pawn? This is worse, because it allows black's trick. Queen c1 check. The king has to move. King h2 or king g2 doesn't really matter here. King g2, queen c2 check, same thing. We are picking up the knight. So after bishop takes f3, black's idea is to play queen c1 check. So let's put a stop to that with rook c4. Black retreats his bishop, but now the knight can come in. And black's taking over. The rook on c4 is so useful. Stops the bishop moving. White can slowly creep into the position with queen g5 to queen to f6, and then play h6. White is winning here. After a takes b3, rook d8 played. Pause the video to find a tactic. I'll give you 5 seconds. The back rank is weak, so Carlsen plays e6. The queens now attack each other. But if black takes white's queen, then white will take the rook with check. And it is mate. So he cannot capture. So after e6, Giri threw in a check instead. Queen c1 check, just king h2. Rook takes d4. And Carlsen doesn't even take the rook. He goes e7. Wow, what a move. The rook cannot go to e4 because of the pawn. It cannot go here because the pawn will take the rook. So Giri has to bring back his queen to stop promotion. But when black's queen goes back, white's queen goes forward with queen e5. You're going to get a queen, checkmate is threatened, and you can get your rook back. So queen e5. And the game will be over very soon. In the game, rook h4 check was played, but what if g takes f5? This does not lead to an endgame. This leads to the game ending, because white can promote. Take, king g7 and queen e5 check, picking up the rook. So after queen e5, Giri threw in a desperate check, doesn't do anything. Rook h4 check, and Carlsen just played king g3. And here, Giri resigned. If we go back, you can just take the rook. Knight takes h4. Because white is still threatening to promote, h6 with queen g7 instead. So if we just quickly look at this, bishop c6, let's say, h6. If f6, queen f6, and we're threatening mate. And there is no way to stop it. Queen b8 check, you can just block. Knight h4, if you block with the queen, let's say, h6 is the same problem. A nice deflection idea coming up. f6 once again, take, queen f7, and we're not swapping off queens. We are promoting and then delivering checkmate. Check, deflect the queen, and then queen g7 checkmate. Carlsen won the first match of day 2. And you can see from this table, the next 3 games were drawn, even though Giri had winning chances in all games. But they were not taken today. Anish Giri came second, $27,000. Magnus Carlsen is the winner with $45,000. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Here are the key points about the game. In the opening, we had a semi-tarrasch, both white rooks on d1 and e1 defending the center. This was different to Giri versus Nepo in the semi-finals, where Giri went for an early d5 in the middle game, pawn sacrifice with d5, then knight d4, and black cannot take white's pawn on e5. There was a defensive resource, bishop d5, to give up the exchange rook for knight, and the middle game tactic queen g3, that was the first brilliant move to threaten checkmate, and then e6 to follow with queen e5, a brilliant finish to the game.